Good evening, everybody. It's Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading. It's 10:24 p.m. on June 20th, 2023. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome, newcomers. I noticed that quite a few newcomers in the last week or so. For the newcomers, my name is Lorraine. I moved from Manalapan, New Jersey in 2019 to remote rural Kentucky, purchasing 64 acres of land. I now have chickens, guinea fowl, my rescue cats, and a whole bunch of criminals that trespass my property on a daily basis. And speaking of which, before I get into what we're going to talk about tonight, please hit the thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, gets the message out there. I was out in the field today. The grass lawn service was here today, and they were doing like a lot of weed whacking of a whole bunch of overgrown shrubs and stuff. And I was, as he was cutting, I was lifting up all the debris and then bringing it to the burn pit. And there was a lot of fallen wood, etc., etc. So I must have been there at least an hour and a half, maybe even more. While I was there, a couple of times I would hear my roosters like really cackling. They don't usually cackle that much during the day. Unless they're experiencing something, somebody's trespassing or somebody's bothering one of the girls or whatever. Well, I notice when I get back and I'm feeding the cats, somebody was on the property and stole off of the porch where I feed the outside cats a huge, it's a huge dog bowl. I brought it from Manalapan, New Jersey. It was in great condition. It's probably about $20 at this point. Filled with food. I decided, let me fill it up now so that I don't forget later. And it's gone. Was stolen. So these criminals on my property, they're here every day. I don't know about, what your targeting is like, guys, but mine is non-stop every effing day. And speaking of every effing whatever, we get to talk about my favorite Bureau of Instigation. Yes, we've got an amazing article that I will read to you. It's dated June 20th today. It was put out at 2:05 p.m. It's by John and Nisha Whitehead from the Rutherford Institute. If anybody doesn't know who they are, these are wonderful attorneys and stuff like that. Really need to subscribe to their newsletter. But before I read the article, which is amazing, look what I got in the mail today, everybody. I've got the fall of my favorite Bureau of Instigation, how a once great agency became a threat to democracy. Here you go, folks. This is the book. And I know after I posted that video about this book, somebody went out and got the Kindle version. Of course, oh my goodness, some of the print is really small, guys. Like, how could they do this? Look. Like, chapter 1 is the good. Sometimes it is like the movies. Part 2, the bad injustice. Part 3, the uglies and the fall of the FBI. And in that part 3, it's chapter 27, Mueller changed the culture. A tale of two conspiracies. Transparency and institutional failure. There was no obstruction of justice. The worst FBI director. That's on page 273. The FBI was lucky to have Bill Barr. The abuse of General Flynn. The need for intelligence reform. That's on page 289. The FBI's broken culture. Page 303. And can the culture be won back? 316. Then there's a conclusion, an epilogue, an afterword, a bibliography, a glossary, appendix, and acknowledgments. So here it goes, folks. I mean, at some point, I will, when I've had time to review this rotten apples or a rotten culture, it's going to take me a while to get through here and kind of bookmark things to read for you guys, but and I'm not going to get to this anytime soon, but what I will get to is this amazing article about my favorite Bureau of Instigation. It's entitled FBI Make Work Entrapment Schemes, Creating Criminals in Order to Arrest Them. Wow, that's big, folks. All the targeted people out there that are listening to this, please, I will place a link to this when I upload this. You need this article. You need to share this article. We're not dealing with a government that exists to serve its people, protect their liberties, and ensure their happiness. Rather, we are the unfortunate victims of the diabolical machinations of a Make Works program carried out on an epic scale, whose only purpose is to keep the powers that be permanently and profitably employed. Case in point, the FBI. The government's henchmen have become the embodiment of how power, once acquired, can be so easily corrupted and abused. Indeed, far from being tough on crime, FBI agents are also among the nation's most notorious lawbreakers. Wow. Well, whether the FBI is planting undercover agents in churches, synagogues, and mosques, issuing fake emergency letters to gain access to Americans' phone records, using intimidation tactics to silence Americans who are critical of the government, or persuading impressionable individuals to plot acts of terror and then entrapping them, the overall impression of the nation's secret police force is that of a well-dressed thug flexing its muscles and doing the boss's dirty work. Clearly, this is not a government agency that appears to understand, let alone respect, the limits of the Constitution. Well, you know, this guy's got away with words. I kind of like his wording here. This is cool. Indeed, this same government agency has a pattern and practice of entrapment that involves targeting vulnerable individuals, feeding them with propaganda, know-how, and weapons intended to turn them into terrorists, and then arresting them as part of an elaborately orchestrated counter-terrorism sting. Basically, it works like this. In order to justify their crime-fighting superpowers, the FBI manufactures criminals by targeting vulnerable individuals and feeding them anti-government propaganda. Then, undercover agents and informers equip the targeted individuals with the training and resources to challenge what they've been indoctrinated into believing is government corruption. And finally, the FBI arrests the targeted individuals for engaging in anti-government terrorist activities. Wow. I know for a fact that a couple of police officers at the Manalapan Police Department were trained by the FBI. They took their FBI training course. And they labeled me a terror threat for walking on my own driveway. Wow. Isn't that amazing? This guy's speaking the truth. So, for example, undercover FBI agents pretending to be associated with ISIS have been accused of seeking out online and befriending a 16-year-old with brain development issues. Okay, this is disgusting. Persuading him to secretly send them small cash donations in the form of gift cards, and then the moment Matteo Ventura turned 18, arresting him for providing financial support to an Islamic terrorist group. That's disgusting. Wow. If convicted, the teenager could spend up to 10 years in prison. Yet, as The Intercept explains, the only terrorist he's accused of ever being in contact with was the undercover FBI agent who befriended him online as a 16-year-old. This law enforcement tactic has been criticized by national security researchers who have scrutinized the FBI's role in manufacturing terrorism cases using vulnerable people who would have been unable to commit crimes without prolonged government assistance and encouragement. That's sort of like sicking the citizens on patrol, stalkers, to harass targeted people 24/7, trespassing their property, murdering their pets, stealing their peanut butter, stealing their cat food, yeah, puncturing holes in my clothes, and yeah, guys, I still owe you the fashion show. There's that song, fashion show. I haven't forgotten. It's just the weather's not been good here, and I've got to do it on a nice sunny day. But anyway, so this law enforcement tactic has been criticized by national security researchers who have scrutinized the FBI's role in manufacturing terrorism cases, causing vulnerable people who would have been unable to commit the crimes without prolonged government assistance and encouragement. The Ventura case may indicate that authorities are still open to conjuring terrorists where none existed. In another incident, the FBI used an undercover agent informant to seek out and groom an impressionable young man, cultivating his friendship, gaining his sympathy, stoking his outrage over injustices perpetrated by the U.S. government, then enlisting his help to blow up the Herald Square subway station. Despite the fact that Shahwar Matin Siraj ultimately refused to plant a bomb at the train station, he was arrested for conspiring to do so at the urging of his FBI informant and used to bolster the government's track record in foiling terrorist plots. Of course, no mention was made of the part the government played in fabricating the plot, recruiting a would-be bomber and setting him up to take the fall. These are Machiavellian tactics with far-reaching consequences for every segment of the population, no matter what one's political leanings, but it is especially dangerous for anyone whose views could be in any way characterized as anti-government. I don't know, folks. Is anti-FBI anti-government? As Rosina Ali writes for the New York Times Magazine, quote, "The government's approach to counter-terrorism erodes constitutional protections for everyone by blurring the lines between speech and action and by broadening the scope of who is classified as a threat," unquote. Oh yeah, I can prove. The Manalapan Police Department, I'm going to keep saying it, because I've been praying for citizen journalists to speak out about my harassment by the Manalapan Police Department, and my dream has maybe come true. So, for instance, it was reported that the FBI had been secretly carrying out an entrapment scheme in which it used a front company, ANOM, to sell purportedly hack-proof phones to organized crime syndicates, and then used those phones to spy on them as they planned illegal drug shipments, plotted robberies, and put out contracts for killings using those booby-trapped phones. All told, the FBI intercepted 27 million messages over the course of 18 months. What this means is that the FBI was also illegally spying on individuals using those encrypted phones who may not have been involved in any criminal activity whatsoever. Even reading a newspaper article is now enough to get you flagged for surveillance by the FBI. Oh well, I'm reading an article. The agency served a subpoena on USA Today, Gannett, to provide the internet addresses and mobile phone information for everyone who read a news story online on a particular day and time about the deadly shooting of FBI agents. That's a little sick, folks. That's a really paranoid. I don't know. They appear to be a little paranoid to me. Do they appear a little paranoid to you folks? About reading a newspaper? Wow. This is the danger of allowing the government to carry out widespread surveillance, sting, and entrapment operations using dubious tactics that sidestep the rule of law. We, the people, quote unquote, become suspects and potential criminals, while government agents empowered to fight crime using all means at their disposal become indistinguishable from the corrupt forces they seek to vanquish. To go after terrorists, they become terrorists. To go after drug smugglers, they become drug smugglers. To go after thieves, they become thieves. For instance, when the FBI raided a California business that was suspected of letting drug dealers anonymously stash guns, drugs, and cash in its private vaults, agents seized the contents of all the safety deposit boxes, filed forfeiture motions to keep the contents, which included millions of dollars worth of valuables owned by individuals not accused of any crime whatsoever. Wow, that is despicable. It is hard to say whether we're dealing with a kleptocracy, which is a government ruled by thieves. I like that word. Kleptocracy, a government ruled by thieves. A kakistocracy, a government run by unprincipled career politicians, corporations, and thieves that panders to the worst vices in our nature and has little regard for the rights of American citizens. Or if we've gone straight to an idiocracy. This certainly isn't a constitutional democracy, however. Some days it feels like the FBI is running its own crime syndicate, complete with mob rule and mafia-style justice. In addition to creating certain crimes in order to then solve them, the FBI also gives certain informants permission to break the law. Oh yeah, you know about that. My neighbors broke the law. Again, and again, and again, and again. I'm sure your neighbors broke the law too. So the FBI gives certain informants permission to break the law, including everything from buying and selling illegal drugs to bribing government officials and plotting robberies in exchange for their cooperation on other fronts. USA Today estimates that agents have authorized criminals to engage in as many as 15 crimes a day, or 5,600 crimes a year. Some of these informants are getting paid astronomical sums. One particularly unsavory fellow, later arrested for attempting to run over a police officer. Yeah, you heard that right, folks. Was actually paid $85,000 for his help laying the trap for an entrapment scheme. In a stunning development reported by the Washington Post, a probe into misconduct by an FBI agent resulted in the release of at least a dozen convicted drug dealers from prison. Is that amazing? A dozen convicted drug dealers were released from prison. In addition to procedural misconduct, trespassing, enabling criminal activity, damaging private property, the FBI's laundry list of crimes against American people include surveillance, disinformation, blackmail, entrapment, intimidation tactics, and harassment. What about the pet murder, you criminals? For example, the Associated Press lodged a complaint with the Department of Justice after learning that FBI agents created a fake Associated Press news story and emailed it along with a clickable link to a bomb threat suspect in order to implant tracking technology onto his computer and identify his location. Lambasting the agency, AP attorney Karen Kaiser railed, the FBI may have intended this false story as a trap for only one person. However, the individual could easily have reposted the story to social networks, distributing to thousands of people under our name what was essentially a piece of government disinformation. Then again, to those familiar with COINTELPRO, an FBI program created to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, and neutralize groups of individuals the government considers politically objectionable, it should come as no surprise that the agency has mastered the art of government disinformation. The FBI has particularly criticized in the wake of 9/11 terrorist attacks for targeting vulnerable individuals and not only luring them into fake terror plots, but actually equipping them with the organization, money, weapons, and motivation to carry out the plots, entrapment, and then jailing them for their so-called terrorist plotting. This is what the FBI characterizes as forward-leaning, preventative prosecutions. What tricky wording that is, folks. The FBI has also repeatedly sought to expand its invasive hacking powers to allow agents to hack into any computer anywhere in the world. Suffice it to say that when and if a true history of the FBI is ever written, it will not only track the rise of the American police state, but it will also chart the decline of freedom in America. How a nation that once abided by the rule of law and held the government accountable for its actions has steadily devolved into a police state where justice is one-sided, a corporate elite runs the show, representative government is a mockery, police are extensions of the military, surveillance is rampant, privacy is extinct, and the law is little more than a tool for the government to browbeat the people into compliance. This is how tyranny rises and freedom falls. The powers that be are not acting in our best interests. Almost every tyranny being perpetrated by the U.S. government against the citizenry, purportedly to keep us safe and the nation secure, has come about the result of some threat manufactured in one way or another by our own government. Think about it. Hey, targeted folks, we don't have to think about this too long. We all have proof that this is happening to us. Cyber warfare, terrorism, biochemical attacks, the nuclear arms race, surveillance, the drug wars, domestic extremism, the C-19 pandemic. Well, he didn't say that. I did. In almost every instance, the U.S. government, often spearheaded by the FBI, has in its typical Machiavellian fashion sown the seeds of terror domestically and internationally in order to expand its own totalitarian powers. Consider that this very same government has taken every bit of technology sold to us as being in our best interests. GPS devices, surveillance, non-lethal weapons. Wow, he added it in there. Non-lethal weapons, etc. And used it against us to track, control, and trap us. Are you getting the picture yet? The U.S. government isn't protecting us from threats to our freedoms. The U.S. government is creating the threats to our freedoms. It is, as I make clear in my book, Battlefield America, the War on the American People, and its fictional counterpart, the Eric Blair Diaries, is the source of the threats to our freedoms. So, folks, well, that was a mouthful in an article. The article is dated today, June 20th, 2023. Here it is, folks. And I'll post the link to it in the description center. So here you go, folks. I look so forward to your questions and comments. I can't wait to hear the comments. And of course, for those people that don't want to place comments in the comments section, you can certainly email me privately at alternativehomesteading@gmail.com. And guys, never give up and never shut up. That's it. That's it for now, folks. That is it for now. Wow. Amazing. I'm so thrilled that this article was written. And I'm going to upload it now because I guarantee that the criminals are going to intercept this in a heartbeat, and it'd probably take a long time to upload. So anyway, this is Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading. Remember, please hit the thumbs up, like, comment, share. I appreciate all you folks. Thank you for subscribing and welcome newcomers.